Madame Mićunović, Madame Becker, Madame Antonijević, Mr. Đukić. Thank you for joining us at this opening session. I would like to welcome you all on behalf of the Center for Ethics and Law and Applied Philosophy and the team who worked on the research on gender perspectives in the socialization of the family, my colleagues Jelena Ćeriman, Verica Pavić-Entner and Gazela Puder. After the presentation of the regional research promotion program for Western Balkans by Mr. Mihail Đukić, whom we are grateful for granting our project, Jelena Ćeriman will tell us more about the study we conducted together with our regional partner from Montenegro. We will also showcase the short documentary Parents and Parenting collected from the material during the research. This conference is dedicated to the memory of Biljana Milatović, who worked with us as a member of the Montenegrin team and who passed away on March 28th. As you may have noticed from the program, the conference is structured in 5 panels, theoretical panels: women, gender and social environment, representation and acceptance of different gender identities and gender roles in family and society. The second one, from traditional to modern and postmodern concepts of the family and gender roles. Then more general one, gender research. The fourth panel is challenges of gender mainstreaming in law, policy-making processes and client-oriented professions. And a workshop, Gender and Family in Theory and Praxis, moderated by Verica Pavić-Entner. The text here presented by the authors will complete the volume we intend to publish. I hope that we will have a productive conference, and I will now turn the podium over to our distinguished guests. Thank you.
Well, good morning, and well, I have to extend my welcomes also, since I've been at the Institute for Philosophy and Social Policy since 1997. In the last 6 years, I've been temporarily the director of Gender Equality Directorate, a body which is part of the Ministry of Labour, Employment and Social Policy, the government of Serbia. I won't talk much about GED, Gender Equality Director. There are my colleagues with me, Jasna Vujčić and Dragan Đorđević, and you can find all the relevant information on GenderNet. We can boast enormous success considering the ill will towards gender equality, which I will speak about later. I want to stress the word equality, which is really in danger. Equality in all aspects. There is a growing gap between rich and poor countries, rich and poor population in each country. Education is becoming the business. It's very expensive, and it adds to segregation of rich and poor people. So this is probably, again, because for a while maybe didn't seem like the biggest divide, is becoming one of the biggest divides in our world. So not surprisingly, this is the theme of the World Congress Philosophy in Athens, for which I prepared notes to the effect that maybe in the struggle for gender equality, we talked about gender wanting it to be understood. But maybe we need to concentrate on the new articulation of the word equality. I tried about 10 years ago to find funding for the project called Future Gender Roles, and I couldn't find funding. Well, you would say, so what? But then I was pretty successful in finding funding for a lot of different projects. But for this somehow, well, some of them included research, actually, and we did research, well, almost 2 years ago now, that the Institute of Social Philosophy also in this building conducted for us. We commissioned it, and the Swedish government paid for it. This was a research on the attitudes of citizens of Serbia on gender equality. And that was very interesting because it showed well, of course, many things that you would expect. It showed that maybe in terms of tolerance to violence, we made some progress, that people are intolerant to violence against women, but people are very intolerant towards women in higher positions. And also, people are not identifying with their own professions. So this segregation in education that's growing, and that's of course existing very strongly between children of rich and poor parents, and is also manifesting itself in a gender gap, especially visible in informational communicational technologies and careers in that area, which mostly male-dominated. So we are going back to gender roles, that maybe there is a new articulation of things that are re-emphasizing themselves in terms of femininity. And maybe some of you are familiar with Adrian Levy's work, Female Chauvinist Pigs, Women's Contribution to the Cultural Knowledge, which deals with really extreme manifestations of the phenomenon of plastic surgery and generally these, I would say, mistaken interpretation of the concept of beauty. And now, of course, the theme here is the family and gender roles. As I often say, as I mentioned earlier, we faced enormous obstacles being a gender equality director, but that's not surprising, because the vast majority of women and almost all men are actually against gender equality. They're conditioned so from the early childhood. They can't help it. They're conditioned through culture, through media, through education. So it takes a lot of barriers to break within oneself to become aware that this is actually a useful concept, gender equality, that it is useful for women, because, you know, you find many successful women saying in the next sentence, yes, I'm very successful, but I was never discriminating. I think, you know, you should only look at merit, and it doesn't matter that I'm a woman. So she says, and she's in the parliament only because there is a quota. So really, there is a problem with that people should understand that gender equality is good for women. You would think maybe this is obvious, but try to take a step back from your position as someone in academia dealing with this issue into the general population. And yes, it's difficult to understand that gender equality is good for women. A lot of young girls now would say that it's not. Or as actually a candidate for a managerial position in gender equality once said, and he didn't get the position, he said he worked in Saudi Arabia, and one of the things he said that it is good for women there because they don't have to work. So sometimes you will find those attitudes. That these are, that being a wife is, for example, a desirable profession, and not just a social role. Now, of course, all that is, you would say, best dealt with in the family, but I'm hoping in the next couple of, or 3 days, actually quite a long conference, that I will learn something about the dialectic between family and society in this particular issue. We'll know that family as individuals do not exist in a vacuum, except in philosophical novels, but really they exist in society, they exist in the family first, and families, they exist in a society, opposite to late Baroness Thatcher said, there is a society, and this is an important force for all of us to reckon with. And just because some social structures are breaking doesn't mean there is no society. And when the family is breaking and the society is breaking, then you have extreme groups, bands, Nazis, hooligans and stadiums. This is only natural because actually it emphasizes the need for family and society, because this is what they're searching for. They need to belong to a place that's accepting and valuing them. That's why respect is such an enormously important concept in the street gang. They need to be respected, they need to be valued, and they need to belong. And these are the things you should expect to get from the family. And also, this is something that the whole society should strive for, to provide for the young people. I'm afraid we failed. And in failing to do so, we also stalled the struggle to teach young people more about equality between men and women, which will be one of the cornerstones of their contribution to society tomorrow. Thank you.
Talking pretty much, so I think you will hear me no matter this microphone. My name is Kosna Veker, as you can see, and I'm assistant to the Commissioner for Protection of Equality. This is a new established. Well, it's not so new anymore. It's our institution was established in 2010, but we started working at the beginning of 2011. We're independent, and one of really important things within our mandate is also gender equality, but also in other kinds, if I can say so, of equality. But having in mind that we have more than half of women here and everywhere in the world, so it is one of really important parts of our work. And probably a lot of you here today know that we have pretty good legal framework regarding gender equality. We don't have problems in our laws and our bylaws anymore. Everything is great. So if you're, for example, trying to do legal analysis, you should see that everything is really great. But on the other hand, when you see what's happening in our society, then you can see the things Ms. Michinovic already said, and I will say that we have a lot of. So one of our we're acting upon complaints of citizens, and what is also important, we can litigate. We are not at the moment doing strategic litigations, and I will focus just on gender, but we have also other things which is not so important for your gathering here today. So what is the problem with women and with the position of women in Serbia today? We have a lot of cases, so I can say that's first problem. We have a lot of cases, a lot of complaints where some rights of women are violated, and when they and we have in this form we have like ground of discrimination, and we also have sex and gender identity, and so a lot of them, they're trying to find something else. They're just not circling like, okay, I'm a woman, so that's why I'm discriminated against in that particular case. And I can tell you one example from so I saw it on TV. There are 3 women in one really big enterprise in Serbia, and 3 of them they're fired because they're pregnant. And that's it. That's written because it's usually you won't see it in written. Usually, you know that it is really possible reason for getting fired, but it's not in written. And a lawyer of one of those 3 women, he said, well, it's great that in our labor law you have pregnancy as a ground of discrimination, because otherwise I couldn't file a lawsuit. And it's unbelievable. And I think that that's the same, the same thing what's happening with our complaints. And then we are because we can say it's gender discrimination regardless of what they say in their complaints, but it is really important to notice that they just don't recognize that's gender discrimination. Also, we have 2 strategic litigation at the moment. We have 8 in general, but 2 regarding gender discrimination and employment, because that's like the huge area of where discrimination is happening. It's area of employment and respecting of labor rights. And usually it's connected with pregnancy, maternity leave, and so on. Also, we notice a lot of these ads, advertisements for new jobs, where it's so common in Serbia to, for example, to say that I need a woman from 25 to 35, pretty good looking, please send CV with 3 photos. And so job is for example, for administrative something, worker in some, so we found several misdemeanor proceedings, because it's not for court, but it's for the misdemeanor court, and of course we have a lot of problems with courts, because they're so for example it's prescribed by our law that all of our proceedings are urgent, and then for example we're waiting for a year and a half to get something, not to finish our proceedings, but just to get something. And also, what I want to say today here, because of the whole topic of your conference here, we also have a lot of problems in education, and it's not so. I cannot say that it's gender problem, but now because of changing a lot of laws, parents have more specific role regarding education their children. And now we have, and of course, a lot of mothers are involved in all these small councils, committees, and I think that's also what we have to somehow focus on, because we have several problems. We notice several problems. For example, we have in one city in Serbia, we have segregation of Roma children. Actually, we have segregation of Roma children in several towns. But in this particular town, we have Roma children, internally displaced Roma children, in separate classrooms, in separate buildings. So, because in other towns we have what's so-called Roma schools now. But this is really example of pure segregation. And what they are saying, that parents of other children, like councils of parents of other children, they just don't want to let children go there. And we notice that problem with Roma children and with children with disabilities also. So parents objecting educational inclusion. And that's why I think it's really, really great that you have this conference here, and that there are still a lot of people dealing with some social issues regarding gender and gender equality. And I wish you really good work during these 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, dear colleagues and guests. Ms. Milutinovic-Poanic, Ms. Mićunović, Ms. Becker, and Mr. Đurić. It is really my great pleasure to be invited as one of the speakers at the opening of this conference, because I think that the topic you are dealing with, and we are all dealing with in the next 3 days, is extremely important for gender and interdisciplinary family studies. Today and during the conference, because I will try to join you in the next couple of days, and I will be definitely on the 3rd day of the conference, I will be wearing 2 hats. One hat is my job as a gender advisor in one, let's say, political organization, such as Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and which is actually summing up more than 15 years of different experience working for development organizations, but also governmental institutions. Just for, let's say, how to say, something interesting to share with you is that in 2002, as a gender advisor in the Provincial Secretariat for Labor, Employment and Gender Equality, I was the first civil servant having that title in the Western Balkan region. And this is the interesting thing, how things developed after 11 years. My second hat is that I'm currently PhD student at the Interdisciplinary Gender Studies at Novi Sad University. So from both sides, I'm very professionally interesting and privately interested in the topic that you have here. And I think that, the theme of this conference and the focus on family relations shapes and, also, okay, why family? That was my first question when I saw the topic of your conference. And first, as a gender equality practitioner, actually advisor, I already said that I have a great privilege and opportunity to influence and to shape policies that government adopts, and not only policies but also law. But also, I think that the question of family and gender regimes in the private sphere are extremely important for feminism and for feminist practice. Also, in the world that we live, which is the world of free market and liberal capitalism, I think that and where states lost their regulatory role in social matters, or they are losing every day, I think that family is seen, and recent researches show that family is seen as the only safe place for both men and women, and on one hand. On another hand, it is also a source of new inequalities, which affects women and men differently. And I would like to mention the latest survey, Gender Barometer, which was done by Professor Marina Blagojević, that is, I think, familiar to most of you. And that survey showed that, I'm quoting, family is central to both women and men and is more important to them than work. Work is seen primarily as a means to an end, while the idea of self-actualization through work and career is largely frustrated by high unemployment and low utilization of human potential. End of quote. So both women and men, in the circumstances of modern liberal state, do not see their professional career as rewarding in their lives. So family is actually rewarding. Earning is linked to surviving, and for both men and women, especially in Serbia. Now the recent data on activity at the labor market show that since 2009 to 2012, unemployment rates doubled for both men and women, from 16% to 30-something%. So basically, professional life is not source of happiness and satisfaction, and only those who are privileged can say that really working on their careers and their professional life make them happy and fulfilled. So where is the satisfaction if it is in the family? Not so, or at least not for all women and men. Because again, according to the Gender Barometer in 2012, women are still working housework more often than men. Actually, they spend 1 hour per day working on a household and housekeeping things, according to the Gender Barometer, more than men, which actually means 8 hours per week. And it's 1 working day more for women. They still take care of children more than men, and they still do care work for elderly members of the family, social relations, social life, etc. again, quote from gender barometer results, women and men operate within two different models simultaneously. These are the family solidarity model and the competitive market model. As a consequence, ambivalence in people's attitudes to gender equality is reinforced. It's a very interesting statement. If care work in family is still heavily dependent on women's unpaid work, which cannot be in fact neglected from the policy creators and decision makers. On another hand, less paid public sector, such as social workers, education, health, that are as a result of long-lasting growth in public administration. So we have more and more bodies, more and more people employed in the only safe employment which is provided by state, is heavily underfinanced from the state budget, and of course it's populated by women. They don't have a greater prospect for higher pays or position in that sector. However, according to the surveys, this sector, public sector, is still seen as a suitable career for young girls, even though it is like less paid, but actually it's more stable in terms of maternity leave, absence for work to care for another members of family, for children, and so on. Again, according to the barometer, in addition to all these mentioned before, family changed. Family as a family changed in its shape, and there are new families emerging, new forms of families emerging in our society, mostly single-parent families, which also cannot be ignored by policymakers and decision makers. Just to give you one example, number of married men with children dropped from 51% in 2006, according to the gender barometer in 2006, to 42% in 2012, compared to 42% of women in 2006 and 39% of women in 2012. So basically we are seeing the burden of the single-parent families on women, which is of course a double burden from economical perspective, from seeking a better employment, better pay jobs, and so on. The culture of shared parenthood is still far away from Serbian social context. Men roles, again, within the private family sphere, must be equally examined as women's. With world economic crisis, it seems equally difficult for men to fulfill their patriarchal gender roles as it is for women. Retraditionalization of family roles helped women to find their safe place, under the quotation mark, in the family. But men lost both private and family sphere. So basically in the private sphere they are not seen as a breadwinners anymore because of the high unemployment rate both for women and men. And in private sphere they didn't find their place as a caregivers. Therefore, crisis of masculinity or masculinities cannot be ignored by the crisis of family-related policies. Shared parental leaves, rights and duties, attitude change towards care work and unpaid work in the household have to provoke the new discussion in feminist politics, equality versus protection, or we can discuss about that. To that end, I would like to congratulate the organizer for selecting this topic of the conference, including many interesting topics, such as motherhood, minority family dynamics, between female family members. I think that is extremely interesting in our context, but also in the context of Western Balkans. Relationship between family values and education, which can also be found through data in this gender barometer survey. The tension between postmodern and traditional concept of family, but also focused on feminist research and policies as natural consequences of feminist theories. And to conclude, Alison Woodward said, actually she used a metaphor or velvet triangle to show need of mutual cooperation between academia, femocrats, those who are decision makers, and activists, to achieve full equality in an egalitarian society. I think that this velvet triangle is very well represented here at your conference, having in mind speakers that you included. And I would like to wish you all a successful conference, work and fruitful ideas, concepts and intellectual challenges in the process of exchanging and creation of feminist knowledge. Thank you.
I see here that we are actually on time, which is a good thing, and would like to invite my team members, if they can join me, and if there are any questions concerning the basic questions concerning the project and the conference. After that, we will have a short presentation by Mr. Mihailo Đukić. And a coffee break before showcasing our short documentary. Thank you. Is there any questions, or we should skip this
presentation?
Yes, we should skip the questions and proceed with the presentation. Thank you. Should we change the places? That's even more comfortable for me. Someone's the microphone.
Ne, ili mi da se pomenu?
Ne, vi budite tu, naravno.
So, hello everyone, I'm Mihailo Đukić, I'm coming from the Institute of Economic Sciences, and I'm also RPP representative, local representative in Serbia. So what I wanted to say is just a couple of words on RPP goals, objectives, our mission, and what we have done in Serbia so far, also in the region. We are now probably entering in next phase of the project, probably the last phase. So maybe you can hear something interesting and useful for you. So first of all, I would like to thank the organizers of the meeting. So they prepared a very good project and also very good proposal, because in the last call we had more than 40 applications and only 3 succeeded to be funded. So the people who prepared this draft are very great. So I don't know who did that, but probably that may stay your secret. Yeah. Okay. So thank you for that. And so I really didn't realize before the real value of this program, RPP, and maybe 6 or 7 months ago, my colleague from the Institute of Economic Sciences, Bojana, had to go to Cambridge to PhD studies, and she asked me if I want to continue as the local coordinator. I knew what she is doing, but I didn't really realize all the benefits of the program. So now, only 6 months after, I can see, I personally met people who really benefited from the program, and also I can see a pure contribution for the society that the program gave so far. So there are three main pillars of RPP: research projects, methods and colloquia and mentoring, and regional international networking and cooperation. So they want to fund some research projects, they want to improve research process. Also, we see that we performed some study, that's some different story, but I will say a couple of words later. And we performed some comprehensive study, and that shown that show that Serbian science is a little bit closed, and we can say self-referenced, if I can say that. So that's the problem. Of course, they wanted to cover regional, international networking, cooperation, and mentoring also. So the main goal, strengthening research process in the field of social sciences. So that's probably the mission of RPP, and other goals: to support research, of course, they're funding research projects, to improve competencies of researchers through some capacity building, as I can say, and to help society transformation also in transition period, and you all know that story, and promote regional cooperation. So regional cooperation is important. I can say, by my opinion, it's not as in economics we usually say zero-sum game. So it's not zero-sum game. It's a game when everybody can win. So if Albania is stronger, that is also good for Serbia. So everybody can win in that game. So three interrelated components I mentioned: that projects, research capacities, and regional cooperation. So the program is financed by Swiss Development and Cooperation Agency. They hired University of Fribourg to coordinate all things and all the story, and then they delegated the activities to some local coordination units. And one of the unit operating in Serbia is Institute of Economic Sciences. So three of us are currently included. RPP financed 50 projects, and about 15 projects only in Serbia. With a leading partner came from Serbia. So you can see they invested about 1 million Swiss francs. Now you can see, about 12 projects are finished, and 12 projects are finished, and also four projects still in progress. So you can see, I presented this because wanted to see, you can see what are the topics that were important for them. So you can see they are I think they're oriented on marginal groups, youth, women. So these are topics. Maybe it's hard to attract funds for these topics, so they were interested to finance. So this is our project today, and you can see. So media, migrations, entrepreneurship. So now the other part is mentoring and seminars. So every project that is approved have to have mentor from abroad. So also during the project we are organizing seminars. So these seminars collect people from all projects from all Western Balkan countries. So the topics on these seminars are academic writing, quantitative research, that is functioning like capacity building. We want to increase capacity building of every particular researcher. So we had 17 seminars. The last one in this phase in Dures, mid of June this year. And also every year we have annual conference that gather all people from the Western Balkans included in RPP, but also outsiders, people who are not from RPP. And the next one, 5th annual conference, is in Belgrade in May. Now, I would like to say something about one project that is not, how to say, delegated to other institutions. It is led by our local coordination unit, and it's focused on, its focus is on policy dialogue. So, what RPP wanted to achieve? First of all, they're focused only on social sciences. Why? Because of the decision-making process. We want to have states stronger, but if you want to have states stronger, you have to improve the decision-making process. You have to evaluate options politicians have. So they wanted to have an impact on critical thinking. So when we evaluating options, we have to really understand if these decisions are evidence-based. So some decision is based on intuition, or we have some evidence why we do this. So you can see that policy dialogue project we perform. We gather working group, 11 people. They came from NGOs, also universities, and government. And we try to make some analysis of the current situation in social sciences in Serbia. They performed some comprehensive study that included 626 researchers only in social sciences, and got some very interesting findings. So in May it will be presented some study, social science research sector in Serbia, an overview of the current situation, main challenges and policy recommendation. And also in June, policy brief that we want to give to decision makers, that would be some contribution, what should be done in order to improve situation in social sciences in general in Serbia, what to do to improve evaluation system, what to do to improve the position of young researchers. So you can see these issues we wanted to cover. And now what to say, probably inside information, the next call will be in January. So if you have some questions, I probably forgot to say something, but it's hard to say everything. Thank you.
You mentioned that you want to improve the position of young researchers and so on. Did the project research about the researchers in Serbia, did it include the gender discrimination of researchers, or generally the problem of gender in research community?
Our study that I mentioned before about
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. Not yet. That's very hard.
Of course. I really don't know because when I came here, so everything was, there was a draft they started to do, but I don't know if they evaluated that issue as one of the main problems, because we have time limit, resource limit, but of course
But this is done together with the rest. It's not, the time limit and resource limit is no excuse. You should incorporate all the aspects at the same time. In order to get a real overview, you have to do everything at the same time. You can do now youth and next year gender. You have to look at researchers as a community and look at the dividing lines that exist. Actually, I've written about it. So I know that there are problems with gender and academic community. And actually there are problems about uniting academic community. And these are important problems. So it's important not to miss out an important aspect. And this is actually the problem with the view the donors often have on gender, that this is something that we will do separately or will address in a footnote and will not actually incorporate in methodology, which is what needs to be done.
So, okay, we are open. Please just send us your suggestions. We can talk also later.
Actually, as the dialogue is open at the moment, if there are any questions concerning the presentations we've heard here or specific questions addressed to Mr. Djukic, please go ahead. After that, we will have a short coffee break, and the presentation, the showcasing of our documentary will follow.
Please.
Okay.
Having in mind that we have these issues are very linked to the fact to the business life, because as you spoke about inequalities of women who are employed or unemployed, as well as family as a concept in society. Business community actually is pretty much connected to the governmental sector, with the increase of public-private partnerships, and on the other hand, we also have the corporate social responsibility of companies, and they care about it very much. So these topics, I think, are very relevant for the governmental sector as well as for your, let's say, research community. But also, I think that there's one element missing, is maybe business sector, because I think companies should worry also about these issues, because they are part of this society, and they should be involved in some manner. So, do you think there's a connection there, maybe for the future conferences, or you don't see a connection? It just stands out.
Excuse me, and the question is addressed to?
It's addressed to the organizer of this conference, which is, I think, here in the center. Thank you.
Well, actually, the central point and the topic of our research and the conference itself was on family, and as we've heard here, the beginning of the gender equality or tendency of equality starts in family. But of course, your remark is quite certainly a good one, and maybe our guests, Ms. Antonijević or Mićunović, can give any suggestions upon it.
Yes, you're right that the workplace is like the next, well, of course, not immediately the next. We have family, then educational system, then we have, of course, the workplace. One of the activities of the Gender Equality Directorate is, by law, collecting and evaluating plans of addressing gender inequalities in bigger companies. So now we have already a database of about 1,500 companies, I mean those plans, and this is the second year. we're doing this, and we are now doing an analysis. And what we're planning to do with that is to see where the problems. Of course, you can say, as Mr. Job said, you can use intuition. So you can use intuition, which is actually another name for vast experience and some knowledge and intelligence, and say that yes, you will find the great segregation of work, as we already mentioned, obviously daycare versus building, construction, and so on. But we have, of course, a lot of workplaces that have, let's say, the equal number of men and women. And even if they don't, we need to address that, and the way they make the progress through the company structure, if the company is bigger, and so on. So we plan to also kind of remind the big employers, and we cooperate also with employers in some way, that they should address those issues. And so on. They didn't as yet fund anything, which would be actually the very good way for them to show their appreciation of the importance of the gender equality. But on the other hand, I think they're getting aware, as actually Kosar mentioned, and Zoran also, that we had cases, and we also dealt with that often, that when we found a case of an advertisement that was blatantly discriminative, that we would ask people to change it, and often they would change it immediately, or sometimes they wouldn't, and then it would go further. But it is a slow process, social change. But you're absolutely right that we are thinking of including, especially big business, in social change, which is their responsibility.
Well, I would like to add, I think it's extremely important to have a business sector included. Unfortunately, I think our colleague from economy part of the science will tell us how many factories are working actually in Serbia. I think that we don't have big companies that are actually private companies in terms of production that really produce something. We have like trade companies, or which are also sold to the foreigners. So basically, they're not. We don't know what's going on with that. But I think it's extremely important to change the culture, which is the longer and the most difficult process. And when I said culture, I think the perspective that actually both private and public sector and ordinary people have on care work. And I think it's more and more, we are talking about care economy, and I think that we have to find a way how to measure value of the care work. And it's extremely difficult from the social science perspective, but I think it's extremely challenging and interesting. Because if we can measure it in terms of value and money, and value, but not only in terms of money, but also value as a construct, as a humanistic ideal, I think that then we can change perspective both in the society and in the private and public sector. There is a very nice initiative from UN system, and since I'm coming from this development world, I can say that a couple of companies signed some sort of, not social responsibility agreement or a contract, because it's not a contract as such, but some sort of women's friendly environment, which means that they will enable in their companies environment which is friendly for women in terms of without discrimination, without sexual harassment or harassment, that they will try to tackle these policies, and also to be some sort of family-friendly environment also for for both women and men, and I have to always to emphasize men as well, because we need, if we value care work differently, then I think men should be more involved in these issues.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the presentations. I was quite impressed on what's happening. Not coming from a Balkan state, I'm also interested in how the Western countries want to involve in the Western Balkan development. And I was surprised to hear by the RRPP that there is an aim to influence transition. Yeah? I'm wondering, do we know, coming from the West, yeah, do we know how to influence it in the correct way? So that was my question. So why do you go in to say we want to have policy recommendations? That's why do you want to have? And the second would be, I'm doing applied research, so I want to make policy recommendations, and I'm wondering, are they respected here? When you're doing gender research, when you're doing family research, are they respected by policymakers? Do they react on that? Or do they just take it and leave it? And following the discussion here about business and the economy, I want to add an example from Austria. We have a big discussion going on about, are the business, the big companies, is it a way, do we find a way to oblige them to tell what salaries they give? Because officially we do have the same salaries for the same work, but we know that's not the fact. Yeah? Is there something like that happening in the Balkans? Is there something like that happening in Serbia?
Maybe you should answer, because you have specific data on the subject.
Actually, the salary, the pay gap,
Yes.
let's start, and you can remind me if I miss something. The pay gap studies, well, first of all, I want to say that, true, don't misunderstand what I said about conclusion, that I do not believe in results-based research and based on research results-based policy. Of course, we need results, that's why we develop indicators, and quantification is also very important. But, having said that, let's be aware of the limits of research and also the limitations of the things that have been said in the public sphere for a long time and are not based on research, or at least not to the point of proper quantification. Like, there is a 16% pay gap in Europe. I guarantee we don't know that. We are guessing. The only countries that can say with any level of certitude what is the pay gap are Sweden and Norway, because they have their, the way they do research is they base it on tax returns. And they have individual tax returns, and so this is a methodology that is interesting but not really applied in other European countries. So we are relying on surveys. Surveys are important, and they of course, give some representations. And surveys tell us that actually the pay gap is lower here than in the European countries, and of course we can now theorize why is that so. But we had one very informal survey. I really was really reluctant to look into it, but everybody was quoting it. The media called me every day. InfoStud did. This is a big employment website, and they made a survey on pay gap in bigger companies, corporations, and so on, and they came up with 8%. Now we all know how web surveys are unreliable. Now, of course, we have the labor force survey that the National Employment Service is doing regularly every 6 months, and there are some data from there, but generally, of course, there is a pay gap. And of course, we need to differentiate between same work exactly, same value work, same position, but different, and so on. You'll see, I'm guessing that most of us have some experience with academia. Academia is a case in point. You would say academia is rather a meritorial field, and but like all merit, and you will see in like big universities, where I used to teach, that there are stars, and you sometimes question, why there are stars, but they. And of course, on the entry level, it is the same. And this is one of the things we are trying to address in education. And on the entry level, we now have a global trend that there are more women students and that they're doing better. But for the beginning, now as we go towards the master studies, which will be what bachelor studies are now in a couple of years, if they are not already, you will see fewer women, and of course for PhD studies, even fewer, and among full professors. And this is something, again, they tried to address in Scandinavia, and they found out that it's difficult to address, because you can say, oh, there are not enough full professors. Really, but to become a full professor, you first have to be associate professor. And so, it will take a few years, even if you achieve equality among assistants, which is not going to happen anytime soon, that you will still need a few years for this to be addressed higher up. This is one segregation education. Now you have one educational profile where you have, for reasons that are not researched to the fullest, I think, why is there such preponderance of men in ICT and women in education and so on. And then, of course, you have the secrecy of the privilege of agreements between employer and employee in a private company. So who are you to ask them what is their salary? They will tell it, through the text. This is why this is a good system to address this. And now we don't have such a huge problem in that, because we don't, well, Zorana painted a very pessimistic picture, but true, yes, a lot of the factories are destroyed, but we have foreign companies, for example, and also we have some of our companies that are pretty big, and of course we have those still social companies, like, I don't know, energy companies that kind of belong to the state, but not quite, but we'll see about that in the future, but certainly they employ a lot of people. And there you will see, and this is why we insisted with these plans, because what you will find out, intuition, sorry, but this, I'm guessing, but this is a hypothesis, so intuition is allowed. We hypothesize that you will find that women are not climbing up the ladder, which of course is established in other corporate cultures and so on. So in order to change the corporate culture, we need to give some incentives. Some of them can be legally binding, but some of them can be in another way. We are trying very hard, and again, Scandinavian research shows that actually it's beneficial to include different people with different backgrounds, and of course both men and women in all the teams and so on. But it will again take time. So we cannot quite say. Now what we also think that what in a corporate culture that you should of course have, the most important thing in a corporate culture is getting ahead. Now this is again something that's under questioning, at least let's say globally, because we obviously need to re-articulate the very notion of development. It cannot be measured in the same way economy is measured today. This is recognized. So we need to, but this will take time. In the meantime, yes, we think about those plans. We think of giving a reward or a certificate, which is done in other countries, and to engage in dialogue people. And this is why we think it's important that it is out there in the public sphere as results of research in the media and so on, how beneficial gender equality is. Because you have two sides. You can say, of course, we need gender equality because we must have gender equality because we want a just society. Gender equality is a matter of human rights. True. On the other hand, we also need to emphasize that gender equality contributes to development, which is again shown in not only Scandinavian example, but of course in but policy, you were asking whether policy is truly recognized by policymakers. Now, I said in the beginning that the Gender Equality Directorate is a unit in the Ministry of Labor and employment sometimes not employment, but anyway, because it changes with government, but certainly social policy. because you can say that I'm a policymaker because I'm looking at, for example, the strategic areas on which we will form the focus groups, which will include civil society organizations that deal with gender equality, then they will include maybe someone from business and from other institutions and so on. But to a certain point, I make a decision. But when the decision is not popular on the higher level, and it first has to be approved by the minister, then by the whole government, then if it's something that the parliament is involved in, then, for example, the gender equality law had to go first to the minister, the government, then the parliament, then of course it changes tremendously. And it is also a research tool, because the way it changes shows you what are the biggest obstacles, what are the people most sensitive to and respond badly to. So this is also important, and this is not just some negative thing to say, oh well, the people won't recognize the policy. So I think what Mr. Judis wanted to say is that we are giving, the researchers now, we are giving tools and information to the policymakers, but the decision is of course theirs, because decision depends on the political will.
Okay, if I may add, of course, yeah, the first Western Balkan countries are probably finishing their transition. So, of course, I don't know, but European Union is probably changing their focus. So maybe some few years more we can say we are little boys or girls. So or it's not easy to attract their attention. But of course, as I said, it's not zero-sum game. So the stronger Western Balkans probably means stronger EU or Switzerland or any country who want to find something. But also it's, I'm sure of course that's also politics. It's altruistic story, but it's also politics, it's interest. So I'm not afraid they have their own calculation, of course. And for policy recommendation, what to say? In the first phase, we see there were some, as I saw when I read documents. I'm here for 6 or 7 months. So when I read the documents, I have seen probably that they were happy with results, but there was something missing. It was something like, you know, lartism. They give money and okay, research, and after research is over, it's done. So probably their efforts were oriented to increase that policy dimension. That is why policy dialogue, and also I'm expecting in the next phase the policy recommendation will be in focus. So obligatory policy brief or policy paper, something that can be shown, okay, do this if you want, but you have to explain if you give some decision, and you have to explain why did you
Thank you. I think we have more questions here, and I will just ask you to come after Ms. Kolosov, because she's actually she wants to take to develop the idea about the transitional matter and this kind of a patronizing a bit of the West, or something called West. We don't know what is it, and how to actually articulate these parts of West, East, South, North, whatever. So please go ahead.
No, actually, I wanted to give some input on the philosophy of RRPP. Although I'm a guest speaker here, I actually participated in the initial phase when the philosophy of the program was formulated in 2007 and 2008. And the main idea was something which is obviously not evident anymore, and this is why you are asking this question. How can we as Westerners impose policies to the Western Balkans? The idea was to actually empower social sciences in order to reinvestigate their roles in their own respective societies for the purposes of both things. Empower them to be more academically competitive internationally, one thing, that was the pragmatic goal, and the other goal was to actually equip them with the policy analysis and advocacy tools which would change their society. So the idea was that the change was supposed to be brought forth from within. But somehow I also have the impression that this philosophy is somehow sort of not so evident anymore in the program, I think. So this was just a comment to your comment. So.
Which is a good question, actually. And please.
Yes, first of all, I would like to thank you all for this academic event and for your hospitality. It's clear that you have a limited budget, but if you find some further resources, do you have a plan to expand this program to Eastern Balkans, or at least to cooperate with the institutions in Eastern Balkans?
So, first I have to say I cannot speak on behalf of SDC because they are coming. I'm just LCU, local coordination unit. I would like to suggest them to do that. They're currently, I know, they're operating in Georgia and Kazakhstan, I think. I'm not sure. We will cut this from the tape if I'm wrong.
Yes, please.
I just wanted to try to answer on your dilemma, because it's really the dilemma. First of all, to mention that there is some recent surveys on gender pay gap covering 3 countries, Serbia, Macedonia and Montenegro, done by Institute for Applied Economics. Maybe that's the title, maybe I forgot the name. Run by Sanja Avlijaš and Professor Misha Andarenko. So you can try to find it on a website. I'm not sure that it is available now, but it will be very soon. It's very interesting comparative study on gender pay gap in these 3 countries. Another interesting thing that you mentioned is these policy recommendations and how they respect it among decision makers or policy makers. While being in a situation to be, how to say, a decision maker or policy maker, while I was working in the government for 5 years, and now from the different angle and different perspective, I have to say that I think that we are missing implementation in every sense. I mean, at every level. So implementation of the policies, which are good, laws which are good, sometimes even better than some laws in some other countries, institutions that are working, I mean, they are still understaffed, they are still under-financed by the state, but there exists, it's really, I don't know how to explain that, but really implementation is lacking. On another hand, there is a big demand from decision makers really to feed them with data. I will just give you one example. As a OSCE gender advisor, I was involved in our parliamentary program which supported establishment and functioning of women's MPs caucuses in our parliament. So it's a network of women's MPs. Now we have more than 30% of women thanks to the quota and a new election law. After the last elections, there are 82 MPs. Very interesting to learn more about not only gender issues but politics as such. So they're always asking for data, information, surveys. So I think, you know, again, to come back to this velvet triangle, cooperation between academia and decision makers is crucial. in order to give them the right data that they can make informative or informal decisions. And I think somehow we missed that link. I don't know why and how, but you know, if you think that some of these papers, researchers that you working on can be presented or at least distributed among these MPs, I'm more than happy to help. And you can always, you know, ask me, we can organize maybe some meeting with them, not so formal like public hearing or something like that, but just to meet you, to be introduced to some of your findings. So I think it's extremely important. At least for that part I can promise that we can do that as an organization.
Thank you for that remark, which actually makes me make the link. Because you mentioned something was lacking, and that's the very title of our conference, the idea we had on mind the gap. What is it? What is it where it starts? And this is why we wanted to, let's say, go back somewhere, maybe private, maybe obscure, because it's a family. What is happening in the family? What is it that we have in family relations between parents and children, between children, and try to find what is going on in order to maybe transpass that gap and propose certain, let's say, policies or give any suggestions that might help policymakers to resolve problems. And thank you, Ms. Micunovic, because you said how important the research itself is, and actually we can articulate certain phenomena which can help us in further implementing those remarks and propound the readings of them. Are there any other questions, or we can...
Just to add, the
Yes,
project Ms. Antonijević mentioned, gender pay gap. The study will be by the end of April, I think. So it's foundation for the advancement of economics. It's on the Faculty of Economics website.
Thank you.
You can write me, I can send you electronic versions.